for more insight on this morning's jobs report, I want to bring into the program Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su. Secretary Su, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to see you.
You too.
The labor force participation rate bumped up last month. It's now at the highest level since pre-pandemic, February 2020. At the same time, we saw the unemployment rate go up, more people coming into the workforce, more people looking for work. Your take?
That's exactly right, and those two things are connected. So more people coming to the labor force, it's a sign of optimism, right? That recovery has happened faster than anybody predicted after the pandemic, and that did result in a slight increase in the unemployment rate, but it still remains under 4%, which is now the longest stretch since the 1960s. So very much a sign of strong, stable growth that we would want in a strong economy.
Even though we saw some cooling on that top line number, still a very tight job market, to your point. But given that we're seeing now fewer job openings, still quite a lot, right, but still fewer, and now more people entering the labor force, what's the prospect that the power will shift from the worker to the employer maybe come next year?
Yeah, so the president's economic policy, right, his Investing in America agenda has always been about not just addressing our roads and bridges and need for clean energy and the manufacturing boom, but creating more good jobs in all communities across the country. And we're seeing continued job growth in exactly that way. What we now are really focused on, especially here at the Department of Labor, is making sure that everybody has access to those jobs, that we're creating equitable pathways so that everybody can share in the prosperity that continues to characterize this economy under Bidenomics.
I want to ask you about the United Auto Workers Union talks right now. They have threatened to strike if they're not able to reach a deal with the major automakers. President Biden has expressed concern about a potential strike. What are you hearing now from both parties?
Right. So to take one step back on that, right, we've talked about, this tight labor market and workers having more power. One of the features of that is that unions also have more power to make demands at the bargaining table. And we've seen the positive effects of that over President Biden's tenure. Right? We've seen increases in wages in bargaining agreements. We've seen addressing other issues, right? The Teamsters and UPS reached an agreement that also has air conditioning in trucks. Like, we're thinking about what makes a good job in multiple different ways. The president believes, as I do, in the collective bargaining process. And part of that is allowing the parties to do what they need to do, respecting that process, and encouraging them to stay at the table, which we want to see. But that is certainly what continues to happen, at least for now, in those UAW talks.
Really quick, you think we can avoid a strike?
I don't want to predict that, but I think anytime the parties are at the table and talking to each other, that's a good thing.
Speaking of unions, the Treasury put out a brand new white paper this week showing that unions help the middle class. Union workers can see wages of 10 to 15% higher, and that can actually spill over to help non-union workers. Though given that union membership is so low right now, what kind of impact can we expect to see? And if we had higher union membership, what type of a different job picture would we see in terms of both job creation and wage growth, which is already robust now?
Yeah, we're also seeing the highest level of support for unions in public opinion polls since 1965. So I also think that is not accidental, right? This is very much a part of when you have a president who is saying that we want an economy where workers get their fair share. We want the jobs we create as much as possible to be good union jobs because of those benefits, because of job security, because of wage growth, because of other kinds of benefits in union jobs that also have an upward effect on working conditions elsewhere, that those are all very, very positive things and very much a part of how the president sees a good, strong economy.
You and I have talked about closing the gender pay gap and women's equal pay. How do you think unions can play into perhaps closing that pay gap?
So studies show that unions have a positive effect on closing both the racial and the gender wage gaps. That's another reason why the more we can create good union jobs in all communities across the country, this is going to be a positive thing. Now, the Department of Labor is really focused on that access to those jobs, right? If you look at jobs like construction, those jobs still largely remain male-dominated. And so we are investing across the country in programs that are creating pathways for women. Like in Chicago, we are investing in a program called Women building infrastructure, tradeswomen building infrastructure. And that's a way that we're going to expand more equitable access to job security and the kind of breathing room for families that we want.
Is there anything that the Labor Department can do specifically when it comes to writing rules to offer more transparency, to help close the pay gap? Is there a way to prevent discrimination based on gender? Is there a way to mandate perhaps that women that have commensurate experience with men in the same position who are performing are entitled to and should get equal pay to their male counterpart?
So this is where it's really important for us to think about, everything we've talked about is about building the high road to the middle class, right? Good jobs, access to those good jobs in all communities. In order to do that, we also have to combat the low road, meaning we have to enforce the law to make sure that everybody's playing by the same set of rules. And that means that women should be paid in the workplace if there's a disparity in pay that is illegal, there should be enforcement of that. But the other piece of it, and we've talked about this before, is addressing occupational segregation, making sure that in these certain jobs, like I mentioned, construction, where women tend to be underrepresented, but they're good jobs, pathways to the middle class, that we open up those paths to women too.
Well, Secretary, I know this is an issue that you and I have talked about before, and I hope we can continue talking about it in the future. Thank you so much for your insight. I so appreciate it.
Thank you so much.